Well, good morning, and good morning. Welcome to today's installment of Bathrobe Moments. I am a bathrobeless Lauren Michaels Harris today. TGIF, favorite four letters from the alphabet today. It is Friday, and we have worked our way through yet another week. Now, I'm not even going to say it. I'm not even going to say it. Yes, I will. Coronavirus. Is that like the most spoken word of the week? Yes, it was. Yes, it is. Yes, it's probably will be for a while. How are you doing with all that stuff? I know here in Illinois yesterday, our Governor Pritzker was on the air. Um, and the latest thing here in Illinois is that if you have an event that's 1,000 people or less, or more rather, it's going to be canceled. So that's sporting events, concerts. Um, I don't know, a really good scavenger hunt. But anyway, anything with 1,000 people or more is on hold here. So many happening all around the world. So all I can say is I'm a believer in prayer and just pray our way through this thing. Be good to each other, be good to ourselves, and be willing to share a roll or two or toilet paper. Toilet paper, won't you please? Come on now, right? Anyway, I'm your host, Lauren Michaels. Today, as you see over here, this guy right over here, that is not a fiction poster. That is actually today's guest, Steve Wilson. I think he's at the Smithsonian Institute in that picture. And if you remember, we tried to have him on the show last week, but we were having tech difficulties. And today we've taken care of all that. So he's here today to tell us about his new novel. It's a sci-fi novel, Lunar Gravity. We're going to be talking about that. But now's a great time to hit the share button, start a watch party, invite your friends to come and spend Friday morning with us here. First, help me welcome to the show, won't you please, my sidekick, my very best gal, Miss Lucy McGillicuddy Ricardo. And we are drinking on, mm, are you ready for this? Praline and cream. That is name of the coffee. And again, but this actually does taste like cream. I don't know what a praline tastes like. I know that's some kind of a nut, I think. A candied nut, is it? If you know what a praline is, can you tell it? I'll put it on the screen. Excuse me. And I want to remind you, in case you put something vulgar in the comment box, the whole world's going to see it because we are streaming live, LIVE, across Facebook, YouTube, Roku, Android, Apple TV, Periscope, and of course, our home base, which is in Phoenix, Arizona, with E360 TV Live. Our sponsor this week, we're rounding out our first week. Thank you so much to Chris Cash Homes, where realtor and interior designer come together to make your dreams something you could never have believed could happen. Chris Cash Holmes provides a home and a life by design. And Chris doesn't just provide you her services, she also provides you access to your dreams. She would love for each of you to have a copy of her magazine, American Living. This is it right here. Boom, boom, boom. All you have to do to get on the subscription list, which is obligation free. One more time, obligation free means you don't have to pay a penny. Just either I'm going to give you her phone number and I'm going to give you her email address, or you can hit me up and I can pass it over to her. But all we need is your name and your mailing address to get you on the American Living subscription list. So contact Chris, if you would, at 630 area code 234-1770. That's 630-234-1770. Or simply send her an email at Christina with a C, Christina Cash, just like the money, at KW for KellerWilliams.com. She's helping you find a home and a life by design. That's Chris Cash Homes and Keller Williams Infinity, bringing home your dreams and more. So, boom, boom. There we go. That is the bell of purpose. Whenever our guest or one of you throws something out there that we feel is worthy of a second passing by, we're picking up what you're dropping off. We're going to hit this bell. That's your chance to get involved today. And, throw some love on the screen, some hearts, some thumbs up. Let us know that the message is resonating. So let me get today's guest in here. Let me tell you first, here's a short bio. Steve was born and raised in Southern California. Oh, that must have been really hard. Beaches and sunshine, right? Um, excuse me. He loved the year-round outdoor lifestyle, but then must have fallen and hit his head because then he moved to Chicagoland. What's up with that? Oh, I see here it was for work. Okay. Got to make a living. He eased right into the US and never looked back. He has no desire to move anywhere else, and he had to put down roots deep and wide. He loves the people, he loves the food, he loves the big city, and he even loves the Four Seasons. His professional career was primarily in financial services operations, 20 years of that as an IT consultant, and it was his most enjoyable project was 2 years in Barbados, working for a bank merger. Recently, he retired from his final gig as an IT project manager for a global insurance company. And then he started this new career as a sci fi detective writer just about 3 years ago. And he's working on completing this first novel, which is Lunar Gravity. Hopefully, the first of many in a series. He's married to the lovely and wonderful better half, Chris, with a K, and he has a blended family of 4 adult children, most of whom live in the area. So we're looking forward to him and hearing more about how you become a sci-fi novel writer. So let me get Mr. Steve in here. Let's see. I am adding you now. I got to do all this clicking and stuff, so you guys bear with me. Steve's on the screen. I just need to make him uh, where we are kind of the same size. You know what I mean? Okay, and there he is back. Click. You know what? Do you know people who like when they're opening up browsers and stuff, they're so impatient that they click and that 20 browsers open? That's me. So I have like 6 Steves on the screen right now. I got to get rid of 5 of them. So I'm going to get rid of 5 of the Steves that are on here. Which one just left? There's one. Um, there's one that just left. Here's another one. I'm moving this one up. You guys bear with me. I never claimed to be techie. Now, IT is in Steve's history, so he knows what he's doing. Um, you know what? Let me do this right here. Bam. Okay. Now moving this version of Steve up, moving me over. Okay, here we go. Boom. Steve, right now you should be feeling experiencing a tingle
Yeah,
somewhere in your upper extremities. Oh, there you are. You have, man, you're a clean eater. Your body came back together fairly quickly.
that's a good thing.
That's good morning and welcome to Bathrobe Moments. We're here today. Last week, boy, we experience every 5 seconds
We
you were getting
did.
booted off. But here you are today, and I'm so excited to have you here with us on Bathrobe Moments. Now I'm making sure I don't step on my sponsor's name, and I'm getting everything where it is. There we go. Looks good. Steve, welcome to the show. How art thou today?
Oh, great, Lauren, and thanks for having me. I was really looking forward to being on your show and appreciate you inviting me. It's been great.
Oh, it's our pleasure. I've had a lot of authors on here, a lot of them, but I've never had a sci-fi author ever. Everyone joining, hi! Oh, all my favies are here. Jackie Anderson, Chong Kim, Nick May. Hey, Nick, how are you? Fire thrower, Nick May. And boy, this guy has more talent in one finger than half the city of Pittsburgh. Nice to see you, Nick May. Connie Going, our guest from yesterday, international uh, guru with foster care and adoption. Mandy Kika, my guest for next Monday. You guys got to come and see her. And the famous Joshua T. Berglund, the host of Gratitude Unfiltered, which airs right before Bathrobe Moments. Welcome to each and every one of you. Happy Friday. And you're here today with the wonderful, wonderful Steve Wilson. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great.
Steve, when you were a kid, I mean, is sci-fi the section of the library you'd run to?
That is, I've been reading sci-fi for as long as I could read, so it's been a passion of mine for, I hate to admit, probably 65 years or so. So,
Oh, so you were
yeah,
reading
I've been reading since the 50s.
wow. So and
Yeah.
sci-fi was big in the 50s.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I still have some of my first sci-fi book club books.
Now,
So,
let me ask you this before we get into the whole process and all that, because I say this all the time. You know how it's funny, like when we watch the sci-fi, well, Star Trek, the television version,
yeah,
okay? Some of the things on there that we used to laugh at, ah, look at that. There's no way that's a, and now today it's here.
exactly.
You see what I'm saying? I mean, we thought when we
Exactly.
looked at those computers and stuff, they were okay, yeah, and they were like, Lieutenant Uhura, da, 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 warp speed. But a lot of that stuff is real today.
It is. Yeah, it
So,
is.
so when you were reading these things as a kid, did you believe we were really headed there?
And not really, not until probably we started shooting rockets at the moon. So it was always something that's never going to happen, way far in the future, never see it. We all thought we had flying cars, and watched the Jetsons and all that, but never really thought most of it would come real. And here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you. I got a lot of questions for you today. What about this? Who's your favorite sci-fi author?
I would have to say Isaac Asimov. I mean, he's the master of a lot of genre type breaking concepts. He's got a lot of great books he's written. He's written hundreds of books, and he just
Yeah,
writes
yeah.
really well. Tells a great story, and so it just keeps you engaged. Very interesting. So he probably would be my favorite. I've read most of the masters.
Well, I'll
So,
say this much. I'm just gonna keep it real. I can read a sci-fi novel. I can do it. But I cannot read one of those military spy things. Like
oh, really?
oh no, too many acronyms.
Okay,
You're
that's
reading in
true.
there, and then they're talking about the submarine. That's the PWC 53672-3. And I'm one of those people. When I read something, I have to read every single. I just
Yeah,
oh, acronym, skip over it. I have to
yeah.
process the whole thing, and then it's just I don't know my brain capacity for it. But sci-fi is a little different. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, I mean, let's talk about this. Do you think that? I think sci-fi, just like I was saying, like the spy novels and stuff. Do you believe, Steve, that it's a certain type of mindset that really dives in and just drinks in all that it has to offer, or can anybody get into sci-fi?
Well, I think pretty much anybody could get into it, but I think some people might be a little bit put off because they don't like the fantasy, not fantasy in the terms of fantasy, but the unreal nature of it. I mean, you're not reading about real things that happen in real places, so that might put them off a little bit. But one of the things that just in my study and getting ready to write was sci-fi is a way to build a world. It doesn't. You can put anything in it: a romance, a detective novel, a western, if you want. I haven't seen too many of those, although there's a few. So it's really just sets the world. It's a world building exercise. It doesn't necessarily keep you from writing other kinds of books. So I think if people tried it, they might come to find to like it.
They
Just finding
might.
the right one. Yeah,
Right, a good fit. Because
yeah.
not all sci-fi authors write the same way, is what you're saying.
No, no.
Well, Robert Brooker's watching today from Canada, and he says that I have read and reread most of Isaac Asimov's sci-fi novels in as close to chronological order as possible, over and over. So you're not alone with that
Yep.
favorite author. Now, let me ask you, um, because you already have two nerdy things going for have IT, you have the IT thing, and you have the sci-fi thing, because you sci-fi people go to a boatload of conventions.
We do.
No, I know. So let me
Yeah.
ask you two things. Number one, were you in band?
What?
Band. Were you in band in high school?
No, I was not. I was a I was a high school and college athlete. I was a
Oh,
swimmer and water polo player.
so you
Yes.
were popular. Okay, so you
No,
weren't a,
no, I
you
don't
weren't a
about
high school
that.
nerd. Okay, what about this? Do you own a metal detector?
No, I do. I do not own a
Well,
metal
we
detector.
have a family member who is in a club of metal detectors, and I mean he goes to Europe every year
Yeah,
for a big
yeah.
metal detecting convention. So I'm always teasing him, Rich. No, nothing personal, cousin Rich. Uh, I tease him about that, and I think he's kind of into the sci-fi things too. So that's why I was
Yeah.
asking. So how many sci-fi novels do you own?
Oh my gosh, I'm probably several hundred. Some of them are still in boxes downstairs. Some are on my shelves here. But I just can't let go of them. I read them, and then you know what? I'll read it again someday. So I hang on to them. I probably got a couple hundred, and to be honest, I have six more on the way. So, and I
Okay,
just ordered yesterday. So
really?
yeah, I'm
So
a
do
avid
you co-
reader.
do you collect artifacts and stuff too?
Not too much. Not. I don't really do collectibles, but I do like if there's a series from a particular author, I'll probably be inclined to buy his all his work if I can find it.
Okay,
So. Yeah.
So let's get to your story. Let's go to your book, Lunar Gravity. Now, let me ask you, you've read so many, hundreds and hundreds of sci-fi novels. How difficult was it, or still is, or not at all, maybe, when you're writing and developing your story and your characters and the settings and the names, and because you really have, like any writer, the sky's the limit. No pun
Yep.
intended. Sky's
Exactly.
the limit. Um, so, do you ever find yourself going into an area that maybe you have borrowed from someone else's story, or it's too similar to that planet that so and so created, and you think it's yours, and then you go, wait a minute, and how do you do research?
Well, there's a couple of questions there. One is, yeah, you do find that, oh yeah, I've been influenced by a particular writer doing a certain thing. But to be honest, I think some of the influences on how I chose to address my first novel has been to do a counter to that. So, for example, if you look at Heinlein's Moon is a Hearth's Mistress, they've got a kind of a warlike battle against Earth to get independence. I said, well, what would it be? So I said, let's take the other side of that argument and say, what if it wasn't a violent separation? What if it could be done rationally and calmly and with diplomacy? So some of the influences I've found are ones I say, well, what can I do that's different from that as opposed to, but they do creep in. And so it's just a matter of being alert to that. But as far as research goes, I've taken the approach that I want it to at least sound authentic, so that if you're going to the moon, you're going to find things on the moon that you would expect to find on the moon based on current science, but then stretch it a little bit, move it out farther and say, what if we found this on the moon, or what if we did this
Right.
with what we found there? So,
Okay, so that's a good point right there. That sci-fi isn't necessarily always fiction completely.
no,
It's a nice mixture of fact and fiction.
correct. Yeah, it can be. Yep.
It can be. It can be. So let's talk about your book, Lunar Gravity. Set it up for us and tell us who the main character is and what is the premise of the book.
Okay, so it takes place. I'm still working on the timeline, actually, just to make sure it seems real. One of those research things. How long would certain things take to develop? But it takes place about 200 years from now on the moon, and then 200 years from now. One of the premises of the book was if we just go to the moon and explore, it's a science experiment. Very interesting. Few people get to go, but what does it do for us? Let's instead say, what if we put a society on the moon? What would that look like? And that's been done before. There are many authors before me that have built societies on the moon. So in my case, it was what would be the purpose? What would be the economy? What would the people? How would they live? What would they do? Set that up as the basic premise that there's several million people living there with a complete society. And what would they do? And one of the things is supplying manufacturing, food production, so on and so forth, to explore the rest of the solar system. So that's the idea. They're in the process of coming independent from Earth. They're going to form their own brand new country and be the separate and distinct. But and they try to do it fairly and with diplomacy. But people are going to be people, and power wants to preserve power, and people keep secrets, and relationships are sometimes turn bad. So there's still crime and a need for investigative police. So the vehicle that I'm using to kind of address some of these themes is the idea that through a detective novel, that there's been a murder and it needs to get investigated. The main character actually blew a case on Mars, so they kicked him out. They forced transfer to the moon. He's the main detective working for an interplanetary detective, kind of the future version of Interpol.
Okay.
And then the local policeman helps him, and then there is a female lead that comes in to assist as well.
So Steve, in your book, there are people on Mars and on the moon.
Yes, and there's people out in the asteroid belt, and there's people in space building things. But it's not, Mars isn't fully developed. It's kind of the wild, wild west out there on Mars. It's still the frontier. And that presents a tension in the book as he moves from, scarcity to abundance. as he moved from Mars to the moon. So that's a challenge for him.
So let me ask you, do you ever, or does, and maybe not you personally, but in sci-fi, as a genre, do you ever encounter, or do you ever consider, so because your book is set 300 years in the future, do you ever take anything from today, like for instance the coronavirus thing? Would you, like whatever happened? Could you write about what happened as a result of 2020? You know,
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there are. I'm still deciding on whether I'm going to include them as a lead-in chapter or a prologue. There's a lot of commentators that say, "Yeah, prologues are not good things," but there's a couple of events that occurred about 30 years in the future from here, and then another time after that, some time after that, that provided some historical events, not to the extent that of a major um, pandemic. And I haven't really addressed, any environmental collapse or global warming or those kinds of
hmm,
topics yet. I expect that at some point I will, but just this book just didn't have a place to put them at that point. But
get it?
I expect that I will in future books. Yep.
Wow. So Steve, inquiring minds want to know, because you were in IT for many years. Is your educational background, was there a writing basis? Did you have like a minor in English or writing, or did you take writing classes? I'm just trying to set up how you get to this because I love the fact that you've done all these other things in your life. And now you're getting to something that I believe you've always wanted to do, and it's one of those secret passions, if you will.
Yep.
And but a lot of people have those and they never do anything with them. And so, what was it that pushed you over the edge, so to speak?
Well, actually, I was a biology major in college and did a couple of years of graduate work, and then went into business because there wasn't really a career path back in the '70s in biology, and then get learned to like financial services. But as far as writing goes, I don't have any educational background in writing. So
Okay.
I went through when I decided to actually start this project. I kind of self-educated in terms of reading blogs, read a number of books on writing. I'm in a writers group here locally, and really kind of working at as I wrote the book. I tried to learn the craft as well. So. And I've reached out to people I know that did teach English and had them read sections of the book and give me hints and tips. So it was more of a learn as you go kind of thing. So we'll see what the results, if the results are effective. So, but as far
Well,
as I can tell, it's pretty good.
it really is. I have the synopsis here with me,
Yep.
and I remember when I initially started reading it, I was like, this is hard to write. I mean, because I write books, but I mean, I write a
Yeah.
different type of book. But I'm sitting here and I'm going like, how do you see something that, you know what I mean? How do you see
Yeah.
it and and describe it and give it a name? It's like a person who the people who went through our world and said, "Oh, we'll call this color red." You know,
Exactly.
I mean, they
Exactly.
just pulled the word red. I mean, we don't question it. We look at red and we go, "That makes perfect sense. That is red. That color, it looks like red. It sounds like red. It is red." And when you're a sci-fi writer, you really get to do that. You get to create things, shape them, tell us what they look like, and give them a name. You know that
Yeah. Yeah.
that the reader actually. I mean, okay, I'll give you a in here. Let's see here. Now, I don't see anything that doesn't hasn't been here before. But for instance, when you decide that this guy Jack Johnson, that's your lead guy, correct?
That's the criminal guy. Yep.
That's the
He's the
criminal
bad
guy.
guy.
Now, wait. Now, is he the one that messed up and got kicked out of Mars?
No, the guy that got kicked out of Mars is Hank McDonald. He's the
Okay.
inspector. Jack Johnson's the leader of the smugglers. He's the murderer,
Oh,
and you know
okay.
that in the first chapter. So I'm not giving anything away.
Oh, you're not giving anything away.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. So, like a container cargo, that is specific language,
yeah.
right? To what?
So the idea is, if the moon is supplying, manufactured materials for building, spacecraft in orbit, or they're or they're growing food, and that's being shipped off to interplanetary probes. The idea would be, well, why wouldn't they use a container to put it in? Now, the
Right.
container is not like the one they put on a train today, but it's the same concept, where you'd put containerized freight in a standard. The idea being that if you standardize certain components of spacecraft, then you can interchange them and add them together and build them more efficiently. So the idea is they've standardized it. So that's where that comes from.
So see
Those
here's
kinds
so
of things. Yeah.
yeah. So really, Steve, what it feels like to me, I don't know, you guys, hi Amy Johnson, hi Lori Whitney, hi Shelley Dale. You guys, and Robert, you're a sci-fi guru. Chime in on this. But I think it's easy for you. You can see it, you can experience because you've visited that world so many times
Yep.
through so many other portals known as other writers' books. So, is there? So it seems to me that there really is a sci-fi jargon that people that are in that are well versed in the sci-fi genre, uh, they would pick up on what you're reading. See, if I was writing that line, I would just say a box.
Well, there are kind of conventions and tropes that you want to that as I prepared to write this book, that well, what are the key things that you better do, or you're going to turn your reader off. Now, there's plenty of authors out there, successful authors, that ignore those conventions, but they tend to be they're a lot. At this point in my career, I haven't even published one book yet, so I've got to be aware that I got to respect my fans, or my future fans and readers, and not go too far out of bounds on what I include. And since but at its core, it's a detective novel, there's even certain kind of conventions that you want to kind of be aware of, like
Right.
When do you introduce the detective? When do you want to do? What do you do with? You can't cheat. No introducing in the last clue on the last page kind of thing. You want to be respectful of your reader and give them a chance to solve the crime themselves, and those kinds of things. So you kind
There's all
of
kinds of stuff.
there, yeah. But it's interesting. It's a challenge to kind of then be aware of that,
Oof,
but then
got
not
that
just
right.
copy what everybody else has done.
Exactly.
Make it different, and that's going to be that's the question I still don't have the answer to. Am I different enough that people really want to read it?
Oh, well, I'm certain of that. I'm
Yeah.
certain of that. Now, Steve, what about this? When you mentioned in the intro that you were hoping that this would become the first book of many, a
Yeah.
series.
Yep.
So, as a writer, uh, is that something did you decide that when you first sat down, or did that develop as you were working yourself into the storyline? Because it would seem like you would, you got to think of the future. This is a real challenge, I would think, doing this thing
Yeah.
because you got to constantly be cognizant of where this character is going to go way down the road if you're going to have a series. It's one hit wonder book. Everybody's going to die except the one person. Here's the happy ending, and boom, nice tight little tidy
Yep.
package. But when you have to decide who's going to live on and who's going to this and how it's going to stay and keep people, that's a lot to figure out. What's the process for that?
Well, for me, it was, I started with the environment that they're in. So, to be honest, I start with the method of the murder, if you will. So, in this particular one, based on the title, it has to do with gravity. The next one's vacuum. The next one after that is orbit. So I went through and say, okay, if you're living in this environment, what's all the various ways that you could come to an unfortunate demise, so to speak? And that kind of stretched out to 5 or 6 different ways. And then, so how do I tie them all together? And that would be the characters. And then in this particular one, I introduced the concept of it's not a new concept, but it's a frequent concept of a organized conspiracy, or at least an organized crime element. But I don't want to run that out too long. I said that I can't stretch that out for 6 books. People won't get, when are you
Yeah,
going to catch these guys? Type of
right,
thing. So that
right.
was kind of it. So, and then I just put less and less definition on books 3 and 4, but book 2, I've got a pretty good idea of what it's going to be. But same characters, and then you look at the relationships over time of the three main characters. How are they going to change, and that sort of thing.
So do you? I mean, I'm assuming you follow the same process, the hero's journey, and all of those kinds of things that people come to expect. What about this? In sci-fi, I know that there's a great opportunity in there for like the mistakes. Okay, like the atom bomb. You see what I'm saying? What, what people lived with because of it, the fallout, the repercussions, the cause and effect aspect. Do you find that that's a great teaching point when you like say for instance global warming now is a big thing? Do you go there and write about 300 years later because there are no trees or whatever because of or there's no water or whatever on earth because of global warming? Do you ever go there and use real life things that are happening and then write the action, the cause and reactions inside your story to teach us, listen, do better, or this could be the reality down the road?
Well, I think I've not addressed the environmental issues particularly. The one topics that I have kind of picked up in the book are things are like surveillance. How do you manage 24/7 surveillance information where we're all being kind of right now all the information that they have about us, your privacy can be compromised. And how do people respond to that? So that's a topic in the book. How do we deal with a fair and equitable treatment of basically because out of necessity they have to surveil everybody 24/7 just for safety's sake. Well, how do you guard people's privacy? How do you balance the requirements to keep people safe against the requirements or the desire for people to maintain their privacy? So that's a topic that I've addressed in this one. I've not yet dealt with global warming or political conflict or religious tension in this particular series as yet. Now in book 2, I do have I'm working on concepts around how the major religions can share resources and actually live together side by side and in harmony, so to speak. So that's
interesting.
I'll pick up.
So you actually bring God into.
Yeah, in the sense that there's a religious community, not so much that the story is driven by God, but there is a religious community, and the detectives have a reason to go and talk to them, and as part of the investigation. And through that, you can tell the story about how various religions can basically live in harmony side by side, share space. Nice. So I've done a little bit of conversation with religious leaders in my local community on how that would even look. I mean, how would you even do that?
I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, so that's very interesting.
Yeah, and I've never encountered that in any sci-fi book that I've read where they actually, that lived in that time. Let me ask you this because I see where you're going with the storyline. Now, will there or is there AI or extraterrestrials in your sci-fi? Because not all sci-fi books go that way.
No, well, I have not. I've not gone the alien route, at least yet. I don't know. Maybe book 5 or 6 or 7. I don't know. Somewhere I'll just say, somewhere in here we got to drop an alien in here, or maybe a presumed alien. Maybe you think it is, and it turns out it's not. So, but we haven't got there yet. But I have. Absolutely, definitely, you got to have the concept of an AI. But what I've done in book 1, I'm working through some rewrites right now, is one of the concepts in AI is and robotics in general is they do things that maybe humans can't do quite as well as they can, and so the AIs in this are in charge of certain aspects of society. In fact, the surveillance question, actually, there's an AI that's in charge of preserving and protecting the surveillance data so that it can't be accessed and corrupted by government
Hackers.
or police or whatever. So
Hackers.
and you got to go to the AI and you got to explain to her, and it's a she. She picked it herself. She decided she's a she.
Is her name
Um,
Alexa?
no, it's Sylvia,
Oh,
and she
Alexa's
picked.
cousin. I know her. Yeah.
Yeah, her name is Sylvia, but she picked that name. So, and there's 4 or 5 other AIs that I'm going to be introducing.
Okay.
That's where she owns it. You got to go and you got to explain to her why you need this information.
So, Steve, it would seem like if you include like aliens or extraterrestrials or AI, that that's a different type of audience for each direction.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do you decide? How do you decide which is the sci-fi audience that you're writing for, the sci-fi audience that you've grown up in?
I would say, yeah, I've probably been. I mean, I've read plenty of sci-fi that involves alien. I'm writing a book right now called Legacies. It has to deal with where they've moved to a different planet. You know, the both sides of the everybody in the book is an alien, so or not non-human.
So wait a minute.
Um,
Hold up. You mean you're writing two sci-fi novels simultaneously?
No, no, I'm reading it. I'm
Oh,
reading it. Yeah,
reading.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was gonna
I'm
say,
reading.
okay,
Sorry,
now
no,
you're
I do
doing
a lot
too
of
much.
reading too. No, so I read a lot of books that have aliens in them, but I would say my preference is for what you might call hard science fiction. That's more human centric, deals with
Excuse me.
really a science aspect of it as opposed to alien technology.
Now here personally, sitting from I'm just saying, as a layman, I would if I was writing a book like you are, I think I'd be afraid to read some sci-fi books while I was doing that because, you know, I mean, I'm a songwriter, right?
Yep.
But like I'll overhear one time I overheard a song somewhere. Like say I'm out at a picnic or playing frisbee and it's playing in the distance. And then that night in my sleep I'm like, "Hey, that tune is catchy. And I get up and think I'm writing something, and then I'm humming it the next day. And I think it was my roommate at the time was like, "Dude, that sounds just like the song that was playing yesterday when we were at the picnic." That I was like, "Ah,
Oh
hell,"
yeah.
you know what I mean? So, I mean, are you ever afraid um, that things that you're reading and submerging yourself in could virtually color the direction of where you're going in your writing?
Well, I do. I yes and no. I mean, I do. There's always a possibility that I'll get an idea, but I really test my writing against if I am I writing something I've already heard, or am I starting from zero, so to speak, in the current science and writing it forward, or am I just adapting something that I've read? So I'm kind of always reading my own work with that kind of thought in mind. But to be honest with you, since I've started this project, I find myself, and this was advice from a number of bloggers, that I'm reading a lot of
Hi,
what
honey.
I'm reading to see how did that author handle this kind of situation? How did they handle this particular conflict? How did they
Hmm.
deal with dialogue that sounds real? How do they deal with getting narrative in without so in other words, I'm looking as much for their craft as I am for the story and the narrative and the plot and the
So,
characters.
so Steve, do you know right now, right this minute, how this first book is going to end, or do you let the characters kind of tell you how they want to make it work?
No, when I first wrote it, I wasn't quite sure how it was going to end. I had a pretty good idea, but I changed the ending at the very end. But now that I'm on my third rewrite, so I kind of know how it ends. So But
Okay.
at the so I thought I knew how it ended when I first wrote the first draft, but at the very last, I changed the last chapter to end differently. I knew who did it, but I didn't know how the book actually ended. So it took me a long, and then I added a lot in the middle where I said, "Oh, that particular conversation wouldn't go that way. Those characters wouldn't say that," and so I changed and that's the interesting challenge is giving them all separate and distinct voices. That's kind of an interesting part,
Right.
so that they sound different.
So when
The
you
various
think
characters.
about Hank McDonald and Jack Johnson, you actually see them. You know what their living space is like. what's in their
Yep.
refrigerator,
Yep.
what's in their closet, the way they, you probably even know what their dirty laundry smells like.
Exactly.
No,
Exactly.
well, I'm
Yeah, I do.
serious
I do.
because
Yeah, you think through it.
right,
Yeah.
you
In
have
fact,
to really be in there watching them live, and then and then it pours through your pen.
yep. And what I did was I actually before I well when I first drafted it, then I went back and I wrote backstories for everybody. So I've got a bio, if you will, for Hank McDonald. Where did he grow up? Where was he born? What do his
Yeah.
parents do? What are his issues with his parents? I did the same with all the other characters, where they came from. Some of them were born on Earth, some of them were born on Mars, some of them were born on the moon. They all have different, like the local law enforcement guy, the cop that's working with him. He was born and raised on the moon, never lived anywhere else. But the pilot that helps them, she's lived all over the place,
Mm.
but she was
So,
born on Earth. So,
do they eat regular food 300 years into the future? Do they go to restaurants? Is
well,
there
there are.
is there still money?
There's still money. That's one thing I always didn't. One of the reasons I kind of started writing this, I said, "Really, no money? I don't know.
You've always had money.
Yeah. How are you gonna? We always tend to gravitate towards assigning value to an exchange. So that's all money does, is it helps you have a common language for valuing an exchange. So
Hmm.
um, so yeah, but they eat food. But to be honest, on the moon, I'm still out. The jury's still out on whether they eat fish, but they're vegetarians. There's no livestock on the
Oh,
moon. That's a very expensive way to get protein and eat. So there's no chickens or pigs or cows. There is meat, but they grow it. There's a
which
meat
is a
like
real thing.
yeah, a
There's
real thing.
lab grown meat is a real
But
thing.
they are vegetarians, but and that's all. Some of it's on in dirt on farms. That was one of the challenges. How do you get organic material to the moon so that you can grow things? It's not there. There's nothing there. In fact, a lot of the materials up there and even on Mars can be toxic. So it's not like you can just go up there and put a seed in the ground and have it grow. So you got to get some. It's going to take some work to get there, and that's kind of one of the things that I touch on is what are the farms like? What are the gardens like?
Yeah.
The main city that I'm in is just now getting into a forestation project where they're actually now growing. They're planting large groups of ornamental plants as opposed to just food. So it's kind of interesting.
Lori Whitney says that she always thought that people on the moon would eat moon pies.
Mean they do. That's an interesting. Why not?
Why not?
I'm sure there's a small baker up there that's got something called a moon pie.
That's exactly it. Listen, earlier, just a minute ago, you mentioned that you test your writing. Oh, thanks, honey. You test your writing. Um, when most of us that write other types of content, it's very easy for me to pass a few pages or a chapter or two over to, say, my husband or a friend or a family member and say, hey, take a look at this, take a read, and tell me how you feel about it and get feedback. It seems to me it wouldn't be that easy for a sci-fi writer to just hand off a few pages to just any old body, because they're like, oh no, sci-fi, sorry, not my thing. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? So how do you choose who to get feedback from? Is it difficult to find people where you can really trust that feedback?
Well, right now, I'm very fortunate that my wife is a dyed-in-the-wool sci-fi fan too. So she is more than happy to read my work. And I've got a couple of friends at church that are in the that read sci-fi. But yeah, it's not everybody that wants to read it. So I've relied on family members, a couple of folks at when I was working that are budding, aspiring authors themselves that have read it for me. But you're right. Now, interesting thing. One thing I did though was, and this makes it a little different, is I do have a friend who's a retired police officer, and he was a sergeant detective or in that area, and so I took all the interviews where they're interviewing the suspects, and I shipped them off to him with some context and say, is this actually how a police interview would go? Would they actually handle this situation this way? And so he's given me good feedback to say, yeah, that seems authentic, or no, you kind of soft pedal that you need to make these changes. So those kinds
Now,
of things that count.
Steve, is there or could there ever be room in one of these novels for a famous um, African American motivational speaker to, to 200, 300 years in the future? And and on that note, are any of your characters actually based on people you've known or currently know?
They, well, yes, there could always be room. In fact, that's an interesting question. Now you got me thinking, because I did add an Episcopal priest.
Uh-huh.
So why not add a African American motivational speaker? That you got me thinking now. Maybe I'll
Well,
find a
I'm
role
keeping
for
it
you.
real. You know, when you read some of these things in the future, it's just like certain things in the past. You know, they don't have people of color.
Yeah. Now, do you want to be a? Well, there are people of color in the book, but
They are.
yeah. The police commissioner is. And she's an important character in terms of keeping everybody from beating each other up when they get in, because the detective and the detective police chief don't get along real well. So
You
the
know,
police commissioner, she's always moderating that. But yeah, do you want to be a victim, or do you want to be a criminal, or do you want to be just somebody they go to for some advice and information? I mean, you could do any of
Steve,
those.
I'm curious. In sci-fi and in futuristic things, do you ever think about like, okay, what's the LGBTQ situation like 300 years from now? What's the, like you did the religious thing,
Yeah,
and I never thought about that before. It's like you get to play fast forward.
yeah, yeah. Well, I
With
think,
certain
yeah.
issues. What about like civil issues and the women's empowerment and all of that? Do you ever look at those things and say, well, let me fast forward and give them a glimpse into what could be?
Well, I did think about it. I didn't do a lot of addressing the topic. In fact, I think if you had to look at one thing, my overall approach has been their people, their what would you characteristics of people, but they don't have any influence on interactions, roles, the story. In other words, they become non-issues. So although Hank, when he first meets her, describes her as being tall and South African. He can tell her South African accent, and
Okay.
she has a certain attire and look, but it's totally irrelevant to her role. She's still the police commissioner. He still respects her for that. She earned it by being a good cop, kind of thing. So it's not the mayor of the city is gay, so he's his husband, and there's a
Oh
moment
wow.
where he
The
talks that
mayor the
he
mayor of the city in your book is gay
yeah.
and
But
married to,
again,
oh, how
yeah, and
interesting.
married, and he has a moment where he's
Good for
he's
you.
frustrated because the whole thing, all the work that they've been putting in to try and get their independence is going to get unraveled if this case goes sideways on them.
Well, there it
But it
is.
doesn't. Yeah, there he is.
Listen,
But yeah,
no, I'm gonna tell you right now. Even though I told you from the get-go, sci-fi was not my favorite genre, but because of those elements and the representation, I can tell you right now, I will be reading the book. I'll be buying the book just because.
okay,
Well, just because, and I think
yeah,
that's a great thing. Man, I'm gonna be honest with you too about this one. I was a little worried at the beginning. I was like, "Oh my goodness, how can I carry this interview for an hour?" Because I don't know anything really about sci-fi, but our hour is over and I still have questions. That's a great sign. I just want to tell you, Steve Wilson, author of Lunar Gravity,
yeah,
um,
okay.
that I'm really excited about what you're doing. Today has been a true eye opener, and I really respect what you're doing because it's not easy at all. And you have to just be such a creative, in my opinion, to be able to do what you do. Now, if folks wanted to find out about more about you and your brand, and or maybe had some writing questions, I know I see that Lori Whitney mentioned that she's written a true crime thriller. Maybe she has a
Ooh.
question or two about how you, or maybe somebody says, "Hey, here's a great publisher who's a friend of mine," or whatever. How do people continue the dialogue with Steve Wilson? Where can they go?
Well, I have not, since I didn't have a lot of content, I've not built out a website or any, and I guess it's now time to bite the bullet and jump on Facebook. But
Uh-oh.
in the meantime, I don't mind. I don't mind providing my email address.
Okay.
Yep. Which
Okay, will you drop that in? Now, when you go back downstairs to get in the town car to leave for wherever you're going from here today, you'll see a few kiosks as you pass through our gift and restaurant area downstairs. Pull over and drop your email address, if you would, into the comments
okay.
on here. So you go to bathroom moments or whatever. Oh wait, you're not even up. What is it? I'm gonna drop it in right now.
Yeah,
What is
there
your
you go.
email?
It's w.steve.wilson at comcast.net.
Wilson at comcast
Dot
dot
net.
net.
w.steve.wilson at comcast.net.
w.steve.wilson at comcast net. There it is, everybody. It's now inside of your comment section. Steve, I want to thank you. As you guys know, I'm not in a bathrobe today because I have to literally shoot out the door within 4 minutes from now to get somewhere by the top of the hour, next hour. So, but I could have gone on for a while longer with you today, Steve. So that
Oh,
means
good.
I'm going to extend to you an open invitation to come back when you're getting ready to launch the book and stuff. Please come back. We would love to get behind you and help shoot your book to #1 status on that launch day on
Okay.
Amazon. We know what that's like. We've all experienced it, and I'm sure myself and all the people watching will be glad, more than happy, to get behind you and make that a reality.
That's
Anything,
awesome.
anything you want to say to the folks in closing?
Well, just thanks for listening to me. And Loren, thanks for having me on your show. And I really appreciated the chance to talk about my work. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. And I'm looking for good success. So I'm really enjoying it. And thanks
Absolutely.
again, Loren. It's been fun.
It has been. And let's catch lunch sometime soon.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All
All
right.
right.
Steve Wilson, thank you so much for honoring us here today on Bathroom Moments. And to the rest of you, if you have a story, which you do in you don't have to get on the stages like me. You can put it on the pages, just like Steve. So do it. Do it and do it again. Remember, when you leave a legacy, you leave something behind that the world can still grow and learn and enjoy long after you're gone. And that's what's going to happen with Lunar Gravity and all of the subsequent books from there, and also with what we do every day. So today, right now, my challenge to each of you is to get out there and love up on everyone you can. But remember, in order to be effective in that, let's first find the nearest mirror and say, I love you to that person that's looking back at you. Get out there, have a wonderful weekend. Please join me if you can, God willing, Monday morning at 8 a.m. Central, right here. I'll meet you out on the front porch and we'll do it all over again. Mandy Kitka's in the house bright and early Monday. Have a wonderful weekend. God bless. See the blessing if you see the blessing. Steve, thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend. All
You
right.
too,
Goodbye,
Lauren.